Great, thanks, Jeff. So it's so nice to see so many familiar faces. Many of you have been with us for the last couple weeks. Thanks for coming back. And for those that are joining us for the first time, thanks for jumping in. This is really your meeting, and we want to hear from you about what's going on in your homes and with your kids. Our perspective, Jackie Jenkins and Nina Bassinet from Upper Elementary, Trudy Davis and Ann Allen from Lower Elementary, Laura Moore, who's the school counselor 6 through 8, and then Dr. Jeff DeTesso, who is our upper school psychologist. So a great group of people that are here to answer your questions. So as Jeff mentioned, please put them in the chat box, and share what's going well, what's not going well. Little vignette on my world. I've had the opportunity over the last week or so to jump into classes, jump into morning meetings, even run a snack or two with many of your kids. And I have to say, there's a lot of joy that I'm seeing in those classes, and happy, smiling faces. They even laugh at the joke that is quite corny that I'm telling in upper elementary. And the kids that came for lower elementary really wanting to be seen and to be heard, and whether it be share what they're having for snack or share their puppy dog that has just come into the room. So kids wanting to connect. So that's all great. I think it's the kids that maybe aren't as connected or are having more difficulty with remote learning that we worry about most. So I know a few of you have reached out individually and asked for support. Please continue to do so, either from the admin group or from Jeff, Laura, and I. I think the days and weeks ahead will be interesting ones for us all, and together we will get through it. But I think there's going to be some difficulty coming up, even with a 4-day weekend, right? We're off for 4 days, and I have a feeling there may be some reluctancy in terms of people coming back on Tuesday morning. So I just wanted to share a little bit before we got going, that it's really been great to engage with many of your kids. But let's hear what you're seeing, what's going on at home. I'm not going to call you out, although I'd love to. Jackie or Trudy, do you care to say anything?
Sure. So I'll just jump in because while parents are doing weekly surveys in the upper elementary school and in the middle school and the high school, we're also surveying the students. What's become clear for the students in the upper elementary this week is that they're feeling, some of them, like it's a lot of work. So we increase the work because last week we didn't have as many Zoom sessions. The kids are really enjoying having more Zoom sessions, but at the same time, they're feeling like it's a lot. So with that comes our need to really balance and make sure that families know and that the kids know we're just expecting the level of engagement that they can manage. And for some students, doing all of the work is very manageable. And for some students, that is very unrealistic. So we really hope at home that you're messaging the same thing, which is do what you can. Because this week we are seeing some of the students in the upper elementary saying it was too much work this week. I couldn't do everything. And we have kids who want to do everything. They want to feel like they're being successful, and they think that means doing everything. So finding that balance for your family, I think, is really important. A second thing is, towards the end of this week, I had a lot of kids start reaching out directly to me, saying, can we talk? I just want to have a place where I can feeling better about the tools, that they can use the tech tools to get in touch with us. And two, that they're feeling like I'm ready to be vulnerable and share how it's going with me. So I encourage you to tell your children to reach out to Nina or Polly or I or their teacher, anyone, if they want just a one-to-one chat fest. And actually, as we're typing this, I have a message from Olivia, who I just saw pop on the screen, and she's like, hi, Mrs. Jenkins, it's Olivia. So the kids are feeling much more comfortable, which is great.
Polly, I'll just read one of the comments from Julie. Just want to say thank you for all the extra zoo, which I know she meant Zoom, but maybe she saw my house. It's a zoo. Sessions across both divisions. They seem to really lighten the day and bring joy to the kids. Zoom, not zoo. So.
Yeah, and I think so. Just to jump on that and to follow up what Jackie was saying, you know, we added a lot of extra Zoom sessions this week, intentionally holding that back from the first week to give everyone a chance to kind of get themselves going. But I do know that that adds another level of scheduling for families, which we were nervous of doing in our division, because we know that in our division, pretty much if you have to be somewhere at a certain time, so does your parent. And we know that that is tough. So we're trying to make it clear which ones are more important to connect in and which ones, you know, maybe you can't get to every PE session, maybe you can't get to the art session, or maybe if you're doing the DLP reading, don't do the reading session in your class with your teacher. But that's something that is important to us, and we are very conscious of how much the scheduling involves a parent for our division, and I know that that is tough. And again, the message is if you can't do anything else, just read, and your child will be fine, and we'll meet them where they are. But let us know too, because there might be something we can do in particular to help your family.
Okay, Paul, I've got another question, or Jeff, from Roxanne. I really appreciate that there are opportunities for asynchronous learning as well as synchronous learning for the LAS GCDS students. This is particularly the case as I have an older student at Eagle Hill, and I just spend each day praying that he has the executive functioning skills and organizational skills to pull it all together while I attend to the learning needs of my GCDS second grader. I am beginning to feel over-Zoomed. Back-to-back sessions between EHS and GCDS today. Nonetheless, my daughter really needs the social interaction.
Like that term, over-Zoomed, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's where it's really important that you find the boundaries that work for your family, because that over-Zoomed feeling is not a good place to be, and that's where it's really hard to be your best self as a parent, you know, when you're like, I'm just barely hanging on, and yet you're trying to also hang on to your little people. So, you know, I think you certainly from the GCDS side, you have permission at any time to skip a Zoom, send a message, be like, today is not the day, can't manage. Like, that's so important, because your mental health is our primary concern. And the over Zoom thing, I think at least everyone from GCDS who's sitting on this call is like, oh yeah, we hear you on the, on the over Zoomed. I think many people are in that situation right now.
Yeah, I gave that a thumbs up because I do think that there are lots of us that are feeling over-Zoomed. And, you know, it's so nice to hear, and from all of our administrators talking about this, which is that the mental health of your children have to be our priority. And when I say our, I mean the school and I mean the parents. And we really have to put that first, because when we come out of this, and we will, we have to make sure that we're coming out of it with our kids intact. And being over-Zoomed and making sure that you can do one more lesson on one day just isn't going to play out in the end, nor will it matter in the end. But how we respond, how we help them respond, how we help our family deal, and Jackie always talks about that family unit, and that's a great way to think about it. How our family unit operates and works together is really the most important thing that we can all be thinking about.
Yeah, and I'd love to jump in on that, and I think it's important too. And one of the great lessons that we can teach our kids right now is to say we can be flexible. When we have a plan and the plan is not working for our family today, we're going to change our plan. So I might have written out the Zooms for us for the day, and we tried to work out how I can do that. And now I'm going to say at midday we're all wiped out, so we're going to cancel that plan and change it. And I think that it's good for kids to know you can change your course when it's not the right course on that day.
And I'll just chime in and add, right, we talk about being role models for our kids all the time, and who do they really learn best from? It's the role models of their parents and teachers for sure, but the parents, right? So we've said in every call that we've had, perfectly imperfect. feel free to jump back and say, we're just having, cereal and toast for dinner, or we're just having, a movie night, as opposed to doing what is stressing everybody out, if it's homework or what have you. So being kind to yourselves, being kind to your kids, show how you're getting through. These days, they're tough, they're long, and we do need to be flexible, but also these are great learning opportunities for our kids, especially our little kids, to see how we are grappling with all of this.
Got a couple more Zoom comments here. More Zoom sessions have been great for us. We love keeping our kids productive with schoolwork. I know it's not easy for everyone. Oops, I just lost that. Sorry. And it keeps them off Fortnite. I hear you. The reading classes from Ms. Caldwell have been fantastic, and the live math classes with Mrs. Hall, terrific. Note, we are in 4th and 6th grades, and the kids are a bit more independent than the younger ones. Totally get being over Zoomed. We feel more Zooms are better than less. While we don't have insight on everyone's family, from our perspective, the workload has been on the light side of things.
So can I just jump in on that? So I think what we found is a challenge for the upper elementary student is determining what work, if all work doesn't have to be done, what work has to be done, and we're being very flexible and everybody's doing what they can. I have had a few conversations with families who say there's not enough work, and then we've put them with the teacher to go through all of the different learning engagement opportunities that there are out there. And what we found was sometimes the children aren't aware of all that there is. So I would encourage parents who are feeling like that it's a bit light to make sure that they work with their teacher to make sure that the child is engaging with everything that there is, because it's changing all the time, and the kids are using tech tools that sometimes they're missing. For example, oh, there were these 3 extra math engagements I could have done. I only knew about the 1. That said, if the work is light for your family, we have lots of opportunities coming that can enrich. So it's that walking the balance. But the first step is to check with the teacher to make sure that they are getting all the different opportunities that are out there, because we are finding some kids are not seeing them all.
Just keep reading out some comments unless there's some questions
Yeah,
you
please.
want to put in there. So I do hope the LES students have the opportunity. I'm sorry, every time I read, someone adds in.
Oh, that's me, sorry.
No worries, no worries. For Zoom learning sessions as opposed to PE and specials. I'm noting it's very interesting just to see the difference in everybody's family, as Jackie was saying. When we started this, some feeling over Zoom, not enough Zoom, wanting more time. I think down here with some Zoom learning sessions versus just for socializing. And just so interesting how everybody's family is definitely going to be different.
So I can speak about the learning opportunities. So one of the things that we're working on is just how to organize for more small group learning opportunities. It's great for the morning meeting to bring all the kids together so that they have socialization and they get to play the games, and the live PE, it's across classes, and for music and recorder. And I just want to thank all the parents for listening to the recorder, because I know how hard that is at home. But we're trying to work out the best way to have small group learning sessions with groups of kids around books that they're reading and things like that. So there's more coming as far as small group instruction from the upper elementary in the next little bit.
Trudy, do you want to speak a little bit about the comment there? It says, I hope that LES students have the opportunity for Zoom learning sessions as opposed to PE and specials. I saw that you commented, but maybe everybody would benefit from
Yeah, sure. So we started off last week with just one homeroom Zoom class, and then the teachers individually checking in with each student. This week we added a second one, which was either an individual or a small group. And then next week we will add a third one, which will be an individual or small group with the teacher, the homeroom teacher and the students. Again, to get, those ones will be more focused on learning, but we really felt we needed to get the kids used to the media at first, which we saw a lot of those home group ones, it was all about waving to your friend and showing your dog. And it wasn't about what the math work was. So the plan is that by next week, the children are ready to actually go deep in those conversations with their teachers. And then, you see how excited they are to see each other and how they come alive, but they very quickly now switch over into working in those sessions. But again, if they're too much, we can work with you on that.
Yeah, as I listen to some of these questions and reread them, there's a trend of the social piece built into these. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering what parents are thinking or feeling about their children and the social aspects of what's going on with social distancing. I'd love to hear from the parents on what they're seeing in their children, what their children are wanting more of, what they need more of, if they're seeing increase in behaviors or decrease in behaviors. But as I read these chats, a lot of them have to do with the importance of social connection. And so I wonder what parents are seeing in that domain.
Last week in the chat, and I'm not sure we highlighted it, there were a couple of parents that said, my kids are actually enjoying the time outside, enjoying the time at home. I hope I'm not missing anything, mm-hmm. which I got thinking after would have been good to acknowledge, because I do think there are some kids that really are happy at home, and this is kind of a great gift of time for many families. But as Jeff said, I also have been hearing from parents about some of the increase in behavior and the irritability or the defiance that's coming at home. So please continue to share. It's helpful for all of us.
I would be interested to hear if anybody wants to share in the chat. I've been getting some messages from students about that they're having trouble sleeping. And so I was talking to them about making sure that they get enough energy out in the day, that they're also doing the get in the sunlight, get inside, because it's not, their whole rhythm is off, and so they were saying, I'm just having trouble, focusing to get my work done, and then I'm not sleeping well. And I was thinking to myself, like, I'm not reading a book. Like, I'm not finding I'm able to just sit and read a book and disconnect in that way. So some of the things that as an adult I can think through, our children are experiencing, and they don't understand why. Like, why am I not sleeping well? Or why am I can't engage in the work for longer periods of time? I never had trouble with that before. So I'd be interesting to hear from you, if you don't mind putting in the chat, if it doesn't feel too vulnerable, like, are you seeing any of those kind of behaviors, like diet change or that kind of thing? I did have one student say to me, like, I loved remote learning week 1 and I'm kind of over it now. I was like, yeah, I hear that. So so I also worry about the engagement level as we go into week 3 and week 4, when it becomes more routine and less novel, some of these things. So I would love to hear what you're seeing at home, because I'm only getting what the kids report back to me.
Yeah, Polly or Jeff, I'd love it if you could share a little bit of your thoughts on Elizabeth's comment there about her second grader. Just feeling younger, needing to act younger, needing more cuddles, needing more stories. I know I see that in my house. And I would imagine that is pretty common right now, but I'd love to hear from you two what your thoughts are on that with the little ones.
So I'll just jump in quickly and say I'm pleased that you shared that, Elizabeth, because I do think, there is some regression that we're seeing in kids, and there are some needs that are being demonstrated that maybe you thought weren't there any longer. I think in terms of the academic needs, you were talking about wanting to read books from when he was a little bit younger, and what a sweet thing that is, right? May bring him back to a time where he really was quite comforted and liked to hear your voice and reading a story from first grade, a time of being, happy and engaged. So I look at that as very normal, and, a nice opportunity for a parent-child connection and a bond to grow even stronger.
Yeah, I completely concur. I mean, I think it's a very normal behavior that we're going to see during these times. And what I always encourage people to do is think of the iceberg, right? How much are we seeing above the water and how much is below the water? And what you're able to see is above the water. So you might see the regressed behavior, but you have to ask yourself why. And as psychologists, we're always trying to figure out what's the function of the behavior? Like, why is this behavior happening? And so when you start to think of it in that terms, like why, you might start to understand that what they're looking for is a little more attention or a little more love and care or a little more comfort or a little more snuggling. And when you think of it that way, my first thought is go snuggle in bed. You know, and like, of course, if you're trying to put 4 kids to bed and you can't spend an hour with one, I completely understand that. But at the same time, when you begin to understand the function of the behavior, sometimes our response to that behavior changes when we have a better understanding of where it's coming from.
So there's a comment about like good engagement in the morning and a question about Fortnite in the afternoon and heading into this weekend. And I think that's so tricky because we're constantly talking about how we're trying to reduce screens. Now we've got them in a learning environment where there's screens. We want them to be able to socialize with their friends. We don't want them socializing with their friends during the lesson time. So we're letting them onto Fortnite. I mean, no wonder they're confused, right? I'll tell you as a trick or as a tool, I think a timer is really great for deciding when the tech is going to be over so that it's not you saying, okay, let's turn it off, let's turn it off, let's turn it off, let's turn it off. And then you're already in that, you know, that battle mode, but rather before they start the gaming, you're like, okay, so how long do you think is a reasonable amount of time? You decide together, you put the timer on, and then that's sort of the trigger piece. Because right now, people's tempers are frayed, and sometimes those conversations that normally would be a nothing can become escalated very easily. As far as time on the screens this weekend, I would encourage you to limit it as much as you possibly can because they're on the screen so much during the week, or at least to say, okay, let's decide ahead of time. Like, let's not make these decisions real time. Let's decide that tonight. What does this weekend look like? And then you roll it out that way so you're not having real time conflict. But if your whole family is off this weekend and you can have time together, I would save the time for Fortnite for when you have a meeting yourself and you're like, okay, I just need you to be engaged for, 45 minutes because I have to take a work call during the week, and get off the technology this weekend if you can, would be my recommendation.
I would add to Jackie's, I love the timer and deciding as a family the amount of time. I would also add depending on your family and the child, a 10-15 minute window after they have turned off Fortnite or whatever game it is to transition. I think if you go right from Fortnite to the table, you're going to see that bratty behavior because they are still like, I want to be on Fortnite. I'm so mad at you right now. Just with that sort of addictive piece that's going on with some of these video games. So if you can factor in just a little bit more time for them to kind of settle back into their normal, wonderful selves, I think dinner is going to be a whole lot nicer or whatever it is.
Good point. So I might just bring up the weekend in general. Nina and I led a 4th grade snack earlier today, which was great. And one of the things we did talk about is, will your family be celebrating this weekend, Passover, Easter? And we acknowledge the fact that it may look and be very different than in years past. I had actually a one-on-one interaction yesterday with a child who was saying, oh yeah, we always went to my grandmother's and had this big Easter egg hunt and everybody dressed up. And it just made me think, I think some of us as adults, as well as our kids, may be feeling a little bit of loss this weekend. And it may be a little bit more apparent in terms of, gosh, this does feel really different than in years past. So, acknowledge that, validate for them that you have those feelings and that you are, right in it with them. But also throw in a little silver lining at the end in terms of, wow, but we're doing it a little differently this year. We're changing it up and making it happen nonetheless.
As far as PE and competition go, I know that the PE department is working on kind of a challenge against yourself. You know, like how much more fit can you get over time? How many sit-ups can you do today? How many sit-ups can you do tomorrow? That sort of a thing. I don't think that there is really a push either from within PE or certainly coming from Nina in my office to engage in competition between students. That's not something we're planning through school. Certainly that could be a good cousin challenge, like how long can you plank for? But I don't think we're going to be setting up for elementary age students competition against each other in that way. But possibly I'm reading the question incorrectly. And Kristen, I hear you on Seesaw, that in many ways it is a much easier way to turn in work. That said, we're using Google Classroom, so I don't have an easy solution for that one, but I do hear you that different tools have different benefits to them. I could go on and on about the reason for Google Classroom, but I know that you understand what I'm saying. And then, and then as far as how much work, please, and I feel like I'm a broken record a little bit, but I really do mean your child should do what they can do. And if they can turn in a lot of things, fantastic. And if they can't, that's okay too, right? So it's as much as your family can manage for that.
There's a great comment in here that I'm wondering if other families have experienced from Kelly. So we had a moment with Crosby where he hit his funny bone on the bed and it made him laugh, but the laughter turned into tears. When he had the tearful moment, we asked him if they were tears about everything going on, and he did open up about how afraid he was that we were going to get sick. We reassured him and made a true concerted effort to keep him away from the news, but it feels that everything is COVID related.
You know, I just jump in and say, you know, I have 2 teenage girls, and they are saying the same thing. Everything, Mom, is COVID related. Can't we talk about something that's not? And it makes, you know, us all sort of step back and say, okay, let's reframe and change it up. I love the fact that Crosby was vulnerable enough with you both to share. And love the fact that you listened and, you know, shared along with him, right? I think we all have moments where we're unsure what's happening and moments of being overwhelmed. Good for you for sharing with your kids.
You know, often laughter is really a misunderstood behavior. And a lot of times parents, teachers, friends mistake what laughter really is. And often it's a nervous response to something. And here's a perfect example of a painful thing happening, and it starts off with laughter, but then rolls right into what's really going on, which are all these underlying fears. Mm-hmm. So just pay attention to laughter, because sometimes it may not always be laughter. It might be something else that the child's unable to express in a comfortable way. And, you know, having done this for a long time, I have seen lots and lots of kids laughing in situations that don't make sense. And once you get past that, you realize that the laughter was the only response that they thought they could demonstrate at that time. So just pay attention to that. And I love here the opportunity where the parents spend some time jumping in and really going into the emotional place with their child, instead of just leaving it at, you know, I'm glad that your funny bone isn't hurt anymore. So, you know, touche to that.
Mm-hmm. And I was just going to say also about tears, like tears are a great tool. Like there's a reason that people cry, you know, and that letting down and letting out, it's amazing how many people afterwards are like, I feel so much better now. I just needed to do that. So I would not be saying to children, like, don't cry right now. It's like that can come from frustration in so many different places. And that is a real, you know, tool that your body has for managing stress in these moments. I would just also say about the news, the children in these ages, they can't understand about exactly what's happening when they hear the news, but they can understand tone. And so when they hear the radio or they hear the news and they hear panic tone, they are picking up on that. And so I would encourage you that there is really not a lot that your children need to see on the news right now about COVID, really. I mean, anything they need to know, you can explain to them. They don't need to see the news. And I mean, we are very extreme. We're a family who actually has never had a television, so that's easy for us to avoid. But I do think in these moments, keeping your children away from those kind of images of things that they likely will never see through this crisis. And the panic tone allows you to control more the narrative that you're sharing with them. And for your math kids in the upper elementary school, the graphs that are coming out from the New York Times, there's a great place to engage. You want to learn about COVID? Let's look at these graphs. Let's talk about that. That's something you can engage with, but tone is something kids can engage with. And also the visuals, those are the things that then sit in their subconscious and then they develop fear from. So I'm sure that my psychology friends could jump in far more on that, but that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, I would take it one step further, and it's not just the tone from the news, but it's the tone from you all as parents. And, you know, they are really paying attention to your tone. And they're really paying attention to how you are being flexible in these moments. And they're really paying attention to how you are problem solving during this situation. So they are really taking their lead from you, like Polly said earlier, that, you know, we as parents, we're the role models. And so how we demonstrate, how we control ourselves, how we manage ourselves becomes super important. And in the middle of saying that, I also have to say, it's okay for us to be anxious. It is okay for us to have emotions. It is okay for us to be scared about some of these things. It's okay for us to be worried about family members. And if you're going to be worried, go ahead and do it. But then talk out loud to your child about how you're problem solving it or what you're doing to take care of yourself, how you are reassuring yourself, how you're staying healthy. These are really important lessons. And so I don't want to sit here and say, pretend like none of you are getting nervous or none of you are getting upset because I just don't buy it. Yesterday in our high school, on our 6 to 12, we had a really brave parent who said, well, what if I just lose it? I'm like, okay, great. We have our first real discussion about what can sometimes happen at home and what happens if you lose it. And we were able to talk about, you know, what are the signs? What are the warning signs? What do you need to do before you lose it? And then what do you do when you're losing it? And then how do you come back and recover and repair after you've lost it? So keeping all of that in mind, I want to make sure that we're not only taking care of our children, but that you're also all taking care of yourselves. And that is a huge important piece as we all go through this together. And I'm going to steal from Jackie again. It's about the unit. It's about the whole unit.
Yeah, I'm so glad you just highlighted that, Jeff, because I was going to. I think it does take a strong person to be vulnerable and to admit, right, that we do all have moments that we wish we could redo. So we often use those words, even redo, rewind with our kids in school. Perfect opportunity to say, you know what, mom's going to go rewind and I'm going to come back and do this over again. We're going to have a do-over. Because I need to take time for myself. I'm going to give myself a timeout, come back in 3 minutes and redo it. Valuable opportunities for sure for your kids to see.
So I just want to ask, because I'm guessing that many of you are in a situation that like finding time for yourself right now is almost impossible, right? You're all in the same house and your kids are with you all the time. And by the end of the day, everybody is exhausted. So I think setting up quiet alone time for yourself, whatever that is, if it's getting out to walk the dog, if you have a garden that you can do that in, or, you know, or if it's like, I'm going to go to the bedroom and watch my Netflix by myself on my laptop for a half an hour. Like, it's really important you find time for yourself. And I think that's good modeling for your kids. And I think saying that and explaining why you need it, like, I will just be a better mother, wife, person if I take this time for myself, is okay. Like, we don't have to be everything for everybody all the time. because we will empty our bucket and then we won't be able to be there anymore. So I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to myself the same.
I was asked by some teachers and some parents to create, I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud, a YouTube channel. And on the YouTube channel are some mindfulness activities for parents. There's some on there for teachers. Your children have been doing it in school. The high school is doing it in every seminar class, and I've made something like 40 to 50 videos for those poor high school kids who have to watch me do this. I feel so bad for them. But if you are interested in doing or engaging in some mindfulness activities that are for you, you can go there, and I have a couple on there that are just for parents. And that's another thing that you can choose to do for yourself.
So there's one parent that for some reason it came back to me. So Laura, I don't know if you can see this one from Victoria, because it says it was privately shared, but I think it'd be helpful to have everybody hear this. It says, both my boys have trouble falling asleep. I have tried the Calm app and stay with them in bed, but it takes forever. And they feel that they're in bed forever before they can fall asleep. And we don't even watch the news. They usually go out on the bike, but I don't know what else to do. And my fourth grader didn't have Fortnite until yesterday when I had to download it for a birthday party. I'm afraid it will only be worse. So many things in there to address. I think the one thing, I'll start from the end and then pause and give others time to jump in. But in terms of downloading Fortnite for a birthday party, you know, I think we all need to remember what our family values are and what our thoughts are on technology and time and age. And I'm not saying a fourth grader shouldn't be on Fortnite, but if you don't feel that that's where your child is or you're ready for that as a family, you know, and I would encourage you to be strong and say, you know, different families make different decisions and this is ours for today. I totally respect that this is a tough time right now for everybody, but, you know, be mindful as to where you are and what your head is and what's really important to you and your family.
Yeah, the nighttime sleeping routine tends to get thrown off during these situations because our entire schedules are different. So it is not uncommon for us to find ourselves at night having more difficulty falling asleep, or we have more difficulty with too many thoughts coming into our head, right? The nighttime is where for some reason our brain loves to turn on and it loves to think about all the stuff that went on during the day. And for some reason it loves to think about all the stuff that we didn't do well. Yeah, it for some reason it doesn't want to pay attention to what we did well, but like let's rethink all the stuff that we said that we shouldn't have said and what we still need to do. And the truth is that's our mind trying to help us. It is trying to get us organized, protect us, keep us moving forward, not making the same mistake again. So our brain's trying to help, but what it ends up doing is keeping us awake. If the mindfulness apps in an attempt to cause relaxation are not working, then my suggestion is this: don't stay in the bed. Don't get up and become active, but don't stay in the bed. If you stay in the bed and can't fall asleep, and all of you have been through this, you know what happens is that your brain starts thinking about how you can't fall asleep. And then it starts looking at the clock, and then it starts noticing that you've just lost 5 minutes, and if you don't fall asleep by this time, you're only getting it this minute. And so the brain just becomes almost overly anxious at this time. So my recommendation is get out of bed and do something that can make somebody tired, which is not active at this time. I would be wrapped up, sweatpants, sweatshirt, you know, snuggly pajamas, but then it's, let's do some reading. Let's do something different, but get out of the bed. Do not stay in the bed. And then as you begin to get more tired, bring them back into the bed. Now, I wouldn't go into your bedroom because that's not a good idea. I wouldn't bring them down to the living room. I'd stay in their bedroom with them and try to do it that way. And so this is a technique that's often used with anybody, even adults who are having sleeping difficulties. And for you adults, get out of bed, same thing, stay warm, read until your eyes start to get tired, climb back into bed, try again. Don't stay in bed, get out of the bed, because you don't want the brain to connect bed and not being able to fall asleep.
It looks like
I
there's
just
one.
would add, I would just add on that. So if your child is falling asleep much, much later, you don't want to get the biorhythm off. So you still want to get them up in the morning, right? So you don't want them to shift over and you're like, okay, well, I'll just let them sleep until, you know, 8:50 because I know their Zoom morning meeting is at 9. Like you want to keep their biorhythm as close to what it should be as possible. So you on the back end of when they finally have fallen asleep, even though it might lead to kind of a cranky day or something, you want to wake them up just to keep that cycle. Sorry, Polly.
No, that's okay. I think we just glossed over one, which actually Jackie or Nina, maybe you can address. It says, is it perceived that UES students should be able to finish the same volume of work at home than they would if they were in school?
So I could answer that in 2 different ways. So in our planning of the model, it is not to have them engaged from 8, you know, what they would have as 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. That's not the model that we're trying to provide for. The idea when we deliver lessons in a live environment, they do like 15 minutes of an engagement, then they go off on their own, they do some independent work, they come back for feedback. So our expectation is that they can sustain their learning for, let's say, 15 or 20 minutes independently at their desk when they're doing their work, and then they're going to need a break, and then they're going to come back and things like that. But our plan for rollout does not expect or plan for students to be engaged in learning from 8 in the morning until 3 o'clock. There are many, many different opportunities, and some of them are social, like the Boggle or the scavenger hunt and things like that. But even still, they are not going to be engaged from 8 in the morning until 3 o'clock. And I'm really sorry about the noise in the background, but my son has just decided it's time to make lunch. Sorry.
This is a great question that just came in at the end here. As we move further into this pandemic, we are now knowing people losing their lives. If they're friends, grandparents, or family acquaintances, what level of sharing do you recommend with the kids? Polly and Jeff, we've been meeting about this and having a lot of conversation. But Polly, I'll let you start with that one.
So I'll just answer it maybe for the little guys. I think it's really hard, but I think we all need to remember where these kids are developmentally. Our littlest people, nursery, pre-K, kindergarten, really have a tough time even conceptualizing and understanding death. It's not really until they hit about 7 years old that they can really begin to grapple with even the concept. So knowing that, I think it just makes sense for us to kind of step back and say, how old are my kids? How close are we to the particular situation that you're referring to? Julie, I see that you said friends, grandparents. So did they know them? You know, was that somebody that was a part of their lives, or is that just sort of a fact that you've heard from your friend? So I would be cautious about sharing lots of information about deaths that are occurring around us. I'm not completely sold that kids need to hear all of this, especially if they don't have intimate relationships with those people. I think it will just depend in terms of who it is that we're talking about. But if there is a time where you do feel that kids need to know, keep it short, keep it factual, wait for them to ask some questions, listen to their questions, and respond appropriately. Not sharing lots and lots of information, I think, is just really important for everybody in these divisions right now.
Yeah. I mean, great job, Polly. Polly, myself, and Laura actually created a document that's on the Greenwich Country Day School website under the COVID-19 response, and it's called Top 10 Ways Parents, Guardians Can Help Support Children and Families During COVID. And it walks through different ways to think about this exact question. And we wanted to put it on there because we know this is, as we move into this pandemic some more, we are going to be experiencing that. And so knowing what to say and how to say it in every single situation is different. So there is no perfect way to do this, none. But there may be a better way for your family in terms of this, or a better way for the developmental age of your child and how much information they can absorb or need to absorb even. So I won't go through what those are. You can all log in and see them, but Polly covered most of them. You know, it's what you say and how you say it becomes important, being honest, but being simple. And then it's asking them questions. And if they don't have any more questions, not going any further. If they say, no, that's all I need, then stopping there. Don't need to go into detail when it's not needed. And depending on their age, your level of empathy and curiosity for their questions becomes critical. So if they're going to ask you this question, this is not a time to just take 2 seconds and walk away. This is a time to put down what you're doing, sit right down on the kitchen floor or wherever you may be, and put the 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes that are required to answer this type of question. This is one where the kids really need the parental response to be empathic, and one of my favorite words, curious. And be curious for them, how they're feeling, how they're doing. All of those pieces become really, really important.
And I might just add as one other bullet point, I think sometimes kids take time to process and then they come back to you, whether it be driving in a car or many times right before they go to bed. And they have lots of questions and they do need your time to listen and to help them process. So sometimes it is just that, a process, and takes multiple conversations to kind of address really difficult moments.
Yeah. And as we process, we may see a change in their behaviors. And truthfully, they may see a change in our behaviors. So again, it's what you see above the surface or the behaviors. Asking yourself what's causing these behaviors below the surface becomes a critical question. And again, the language I always use is what's the function of the behavior? What's the function? And so understanding that you're going to see some changes that are going on, whether they're emotional or behavioral, or I don't know, the ability to deal with frustration tolerance, just something to keep your eyes open for.
Well, have we gone through most of those comments, Laura? Questions?
Looks that way.
Please, if I've missed something here that you really would like a discussion or for us to speak about, if you could just retype it in. But I think if we didn't get to each one, it was a similar topic anyway. But if I was missing the actual point of a comment or question, please do type in again.
Do we want to address this last? I know we had said like 155, but there's this last point, and I'll jump in on this. I mean, I think this is such an important piece, and I've gotten this at the high school level as well. And my response to parents is that the answer of social distancing is more than just for your children and your family. It's for our entire society. And so it's a community-based decision in why we're engaging in it. And so the importance of making the right decision for your family to keep your children at home and keep yourselves at home for social distancing is so far beyond just the family. It's a much bigger social responsibility. And so, you know, I hope that parents are not posting social engagement on media because I don't know that that's the right message that we want to be sending out in this time. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
So I'm going to jump out there and be vulnerable and say, you know, I think it's another time, Melissa, where we can just need to say, you know, this is my family and these are my decisions, and not everybody operates in the same way. Not everybody parents in the same vein. I totally agree with Jeff, but I think sometimes it's really hard to have those kids that are seeing others that are together. So, you know, the rules you make are the rules that you believe in, and your job is to keep your family safe and others safe. Not easy. All right. Well, I
Okay.
think I know so many of us do need to pop off. Any other comments? No?
No, I really appreciate how, and it's hard here to put anonymous comments because your name comes right up with it. So to say make yourself vulnerable is really very vulnerable. But I really appreciate people asking the questions, because if they're questions that you have, probably other people have them, or there are things people haven't thought of yet. And then they hear the question and they think, oh my goodness, that could come in my house tomorrow. So it's really important that you share with us what you're thinking about and what is going on in your home and what you're wondering about, so that we can support the whole community, your family and the whole community. So thank you. And I hope you fill out the survey that we sent out today as well. And we'll see you again next week.
All right, we're
Thank you,
around.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.